Hello, I'm Amanda Moreno. I'm going to be talking to you about creating your own new moon ritual. This is a workshop that I normally do in about 2 hours, so I'm going to cut some stuff out and speed it up, just with the overall goal of being to help you guys figure out some kind of intention for the new moon coming up this Sunday, early hours of the morning here on the West Coast, and then talk about what ritual is and just some ideas to get you going. I think sometimes people think that ritual has to be this big thing that has to be really intricate. And one of the reasons I love new moon ritual in particular is that it helps you to track the lunar cycles, which has so many benefits, like getting to know what the archetypes mean for you in your own life and how they come through in your own life. It gets you in touch with the cycles of the moon, which helps you to learn about aspects and phasal relationships. But the biggest thing is they happen every month. So it's a way to really simplify and whittle things down without the pressure of being like, oh God, it has to be this big ritual and I need to get it exactly right. And so it really helps to bring the play aspect into the ritual, which I think is one of the most important parts of ritual, because ritual loves play and drama. So what better moon cycle to go into this with than a Leo moon cycle, which can be about play, although we'll see what comes up for you guys. So before I go off on any more rambly tangents, what I want to do, since this is more workshop style, is just have you close your eyes and take a couple really deep breaths. And I'm going to do that with you just to try and come present. And so just take 3 really deep breaths in and out. And as you continue to just breathe, give yourself permission to come present here. Leave whatever's going on in your day-to-day life kind of outside for a little bit. And just become aware of your body. Try and ground into it a little bit. And then just take a couple moments to reflect on this past lunar cycle. So what's been going on for you in the past 4 weeks since the sun's been in Cancer? What's been going on? What's going on in your life today or right now? What are the major themes that you can feel at the surface? And because we're in this waning part of the cycle, what can you feel yourself letting go of? Or what needs to be let go of? So just set the intention to come into your heart space and just breathe there for a minute. And just become aware of what's going on there, what you're feeling. No need to attach meaning to it at this point. All right, so go ahead and open your eyes. Essentially, in this little workshop, I'm going to take you through the process that I tend to go through when I'm focusing on new moons. So that's the process of amplifying the archetypes that are involved, kind of looking a little bit into the astrology of the chart, although I'm going to be pretty light on that side of it for this. And then we'll do 2 kind of experiential exercises, one that will involve you writing. So if you want to use pen and paper, that would be great, or you can type, and then we'll do a little visualization exercise as well. And if anybody has questions at any point in time, please feel free to interrupt me. So this new moon cycle is going to transition us from Cancer into Leo. And I was particularly called to focus on this one because this next lunar cycle sees a lot of activity. So in addition to Saturn going direct and Jupiter squaring Pluto again and a Mercury retrograde, we have this eclipse cycle that's getting a lot of press. And it's a pretty major one for many reasons. One of which is that it's the first one since the nodes have shifted into Aquarius and Leo. And so we're having this kind of collective shift from the Pisces Virgo archetypes into what Leo and Aquarius represent, which is, with the South Node being in Aquarius, if we're looking at collective karma, we're seeing, the potential for a lot of healing of collective trauma, which is a beautiful thing, but it can also be a really, really intense thing. And I think a lot of people are getting pretty triggered at this point in time collectively, with what seems to be accelerating on the world stage and the things that are going on there. And so the medicine of the North Node in Leo is essentially bringing us back into the heart, right? So what the Aquarius as a trauma signature tends to do is kind of shock us out of our bodies, and that's where we get disassociation. And so Leo is where we return to the heart, we return to feeling, we return to the body, but we also return to ourselves in a way that helps us to tap into whatever our unique spark of genius is. It helps us to hear the call of our soul and then to express it. Right? So Leo as an archetype is very much about creative self-actualization. So this new moon is at 0 degrees of Leo, and that's on Sunday, July 23rd at 2:46 a.m. Pacific time. And so themes that we might start, just reflecting on now and in preparation for the new moon include how we celebrate ourselves, right? How we bring joy and fun and life and heart back into our experience. We might also just be looking at what's been gestating for the past month or the past 6 months, because Leo is about creativity in terms of birth, right? So what's wanting to be birthed through us right now. It can also have to do with healing wounds that have affected our ability to experience joy. So, everybody's going to experience this differently. And for some, it will be more of the bouncy, vibrant, fun Leo. And for some of us, it won't. It'll be more about wounds to our ability to express ourselves or experience joy and fun or our creativity. So another theme would be, what does authentic self-expression look like? And there's a need for a lot of intense honesty there for a lot of reasons. Again, there is more of a dire situation in the world right now. But this new moon is also taking place conjunct Mars. And so that kind of brings in a bit more willfulness and more of a initiatory feel to the new moon. And it also brings up the theme of, what do we truly desire at the heart level, right? So we can also think of themes of divine play, or what spark are you going to nurture in the coming month, or what's the best use of your power. So the way that we, ground this is that it's all in service to the collective, right? And that's bringing in the Aquarian polarity. And so going back to what I was saying a couple minutes ago, I think that given the kind of intense or busy astrology of August, it can be really just a good time to use this new moon to kind of ground into ourselves so that we're feeling more centered and present as we go through whatever's coming in the next month. Any questions at this point? Okay. So one of the things that I was noticing, in terms of my process of amplifying for a new moon, a lot of times I'll go through and pull up the chart, and then I'll read what other astrologers have written about the new moon, and I'm essentially just paying attention to any themes or parts of what they're writing or I'm noticing that are creating that zing within me, right, that are connecting with my heart in general, and then pitting that with my own experience to kind of come up with an intention. And so something I noticed was that tomorrow, or I guess it's very late this evening, Mercury is actually going to be conjuncting the North Node. And one of the exercises I really like to do is something I call walking around my chart. And so what I'll do is just kind of visualize my chart in my head with my eyes closed, and then I will imagine myself standing on whatever part of my chart I want to get more information from. So, if I'm working with my natal chart, I will stand on my sun. perhaps with a specific question in mind, and then just see what images or memories or body sensations come to me, and then work with those. So you can do the same thing with a conjunction, or I'm sorry, a transit, right? So one thing you could do in the next 24 hours or so is do that kind of visualization. Imagine yourself standing where Mercury and the North Node currently are. So that's around 24 or so degrees of Leo. And ask Mercury for a message about what would be helpful for your new moon intention, right? And so again, with the playfulness here, you just kind of accept whatever comes. Don't second guess yourself. If you feel like you're making it up, just make it up. But you'd be surprised at what kind of information your own psyche and your own imagination will kind of like send up for these kinds of things. So another part of the amplification is that oftentimes I will do something like listen to a podcast while creating a collage or a piece of art. And I really like that for several reasons. One is that a podcast is kind of like a limited period of time, right? Because I know that sometimes I'll just get carried away and nothing's ever good enough. And so this gives me like a time frame in which I can gather some images and then put them together into a collage that I can then use as an altar piece for the ritual, and I can keep on my altar for the rest of the month so that I can kind of be reminded by the images on a daily basis of what I was thinking about when I was creating the ritual, what I was thinking about when I was creating my intention. And that can actually be a really good way to also have kind of like a time capsule for yourself. So, you know, in 6 months when the Aquarian new moon cycle starts, you can kind of refer back. And creating something like a collage is really great for a Leo new moon as well, because it is so much about creativity. And with, you know, just continuing the kind of amplification of Leo, you know, Leo's a fixed sign. And so in the previous fixed sign of Taurus, we're discovering value and inner worth and self-esteem. And so when that gets integrated through Gemini and Cancer, we're essentially establishing a foundation from which we can share or express what it is that makes us unique, right? And so that's Leo. It's kind of like in Taurus, we're planting the seed for the plant that can then grow in the sun, harness the energy of light, and then express the vitality of life, right? That's kind of that moving from Taurus into Leo. And so what I want to do now is a series of open sentences. So again, here we're just trying to help you narrow down what might be a good intention for you for this coming lunar cycle. So when I do open sentences, what I'm doing is just rattling off some kind of seed thought, okay? And then I will set a timer and you have 90 seconds to just free write about it. So the key here is to not censor yourself in any way. Just give yourself permission to write down whatever comes. And I'm going to do a series of, let's see, we'll probably do 3 of these. So 90 seconds each. That's just a couple minutes. So let me just pull up my timer here. If anybody has any questions about this, now would be a good time to ask. Okay, so the first sentence is going to be, my journey to self-actualization has been. My journey to self-actualization has been. All right, and go ahead and just finish that one up now. And the next one is what my heart really desires now is. What my heart really desires now is. All right, go ahead and finish that one up. We're actually going to do two more, with the next one being some fears I have around this desire are. Some fears I have around this desire are. All right, go ahead and finish that one up. And then the last one, some ways I can nurture this desire are. All right. So just finish that one up. And so just notice kind of what came up for you in that process, any feelings that came up, anything that was surprising. And anything that you uncover through that exercise can be used not just for the, figuring out the intention and the ritual, but also ways to support yourself or things that you might want to, look out for or watch out for. And something like open sentences is also something you can use in the body of the ritual or for your ritual activity, which we'll talk about in just a minute. And you really can use any kind of sentence that you want. What I tend to do when I'm crafting them for new moons is use the keywords from the archetypes that I'm working with, right? So like with that last one, some ways I can nurture this desire. We've got the language of the moon in there, and then the language of the sun/Mars with desire, nurture and desire. Okay. So what is a ritual? The word ritual comes from, I think, an Indo-European root word that means to fit things together or to fit together. And so a ritual contains bodily enactments that engage us verbally, cognitively, imaginatively, emotionally, and through our bodies. So it's a way of bringing all of these different parts of our experience and ourselves into a cohesive whole within the container of a ritual. So it's something that helps us to orient to our experience and something that helps us to transform. And so it's kind of, when you enter into a ritual space, it's kind of accepting that we exist as these beings on this planet, but there's also this mysterious other. And so ritual is a way to kind of commune with the mysterious other and engage forces that we, can't see or don't quite understand in a logical, rational manner. One of the main functions of ritual is to reconcile opposites. So it's, again, that's just another way of saying it's taking kind of like seemingly, polar opposites and bringing them to center to create something new. So the basic structure of a ritual is that it has a beginning, middle, and end, which is pretty simple, right? And let me just back up a second, actually. Your astrological chart can help you inform a new moon ritual in a lot of ways, but to keep it really simple, what I tend to do is just find the house that the new moon is happening in, and that gives me an area of life. So that helps me to kind of like narrow down what it is that I'm going to be working with. And then I'll see if the new moon interacts with any angles or planets in my chart. And I might just kind of like use that to figure out, again, how to hone it down or make it more relevant to my karmic journey, make it more supportive to my karmic journey. And you also, can see that if it's directly interacting with any planets or angles in your chart, that it might be a particularly ripe new moon for you. And so that might be the difference between doing like a little 5-minute ritual versus an hour-long one or something like that. So that's just astrology. Your astrological chart gives you a way to focus the ritual. But I would say that like if you have something that's up for you, just use that. There's no need to, specifically consult the chart itself. But the chart can kind of just be a focalizer. Then it can also help you to know, what allies to call on or what stones or oils to use. So again, it just gives you more information. So in terms of the structure of a ritual, I did copy and paste a link to an article that I wrote about this in the chat window on the side of your screen there. So for ritual, intention is key. That's what we're talking about. And you want the intention to be in an I statement, an active I statement that's present tense. So I experience life with joy, or I'm able to laugh at life's struggles. So it's something that you're essentially putting into play as if it were true so that it does become true over the course of the lunar cycle. What I tend to do is, in short, I will set up an altar. I have an altar in my room no matter what, but I'll just kind of spruce it up for the new moon. And an altar is essentially serving as the center of the world for the ritual. Okay. So you can decorate it with objects that are sacred to you, with images, tarot cards, crystals and oils that are relevant to the cycle or just relevant to you in particular. Again, I always go with intuition. So if you walk into a store and you see a piece of citrine and that's what's calling to you, even though you know that amethyst is the stone that's usually associated with the lunar cycle, I would say go with the citrine, because your intuition knows what's up. So you can also make all offerings to, if you're working with Leo, make offerings to the sun. And then just for the beginning of the ritual, what I'll usually do is smudge myself with some sage, smudge the space with some sage. I will visualize myself grounded and centered in usually a sphere of golden light. So that's part of creating the container for the ritual. I will call in my helpers. And I will usually start with a round of gratitude. So saying 3 things that I'm grateful for, because gratitude really helps to create a solid container for a ritual. So then the middle of the ritual is essentially where you are setting your intention, right? And there's so many different things you can do there. One of the easiest, I think, is to just write down whatever it is you're letting go of to make room for the new thing, burn it, and then write down what your intention is for the month and leave it on your altar so that you can see it every day. Or that would be also where you put the collage you made into place, or the, stone that you bought that you're charging up with your intention and then going to carry around with you. But you can also do things like pray or talk to your guides. You can do a tarot reading for yourself. You can also use the new moon ritual for the purposes of figuring out your intention. So that could be a time when you do open sentences, or you ask for guidance, or you do the tarot reading with that purpose. You can dance for the ritual. Again, that would be a good one for Leo. Celebration of self, celebration of body, grounding and centering. Really, the options are endless. And so the key here, again, is play. How do you have fun with it? What feels good to you? So then the end of the ritual is where I typically, again, express gratitude. So to any allies or helpers that I've called in, to the astrological energies, to any astrologers that help to inform the creation of my ritual. I will go through and release whatever helpers I've called in. I'll spend some time breathing and reflecting, and then I blow out candles, put out incense, and I tend to stomp my feet, clap my hands, rub them together to just kind of discharge the energy. And then that's that. Or is it? I think that sometimes people think that if they do a ritual or they do magic, then it's like, poof, the magic's there and that's the end of the story. But really, magic and ritual are intensely participatory processes. So when you are setting the intention for the new moon ritual, it's important to come up with ways to help yourself follow through, right? So that gives the magic that you've started a chance to grab onto something. So that's where the knowledge of the rest of the lunar cycle kind of comes into play. And so we have 4 weeks in a lunar cycle. So the first week, which is leading up to the first quarter square, is when you are kind of following through. So maybe that's a good time to start creating a checklist of things you're going to do to help the seed that you planted flourish. Or maybe that's when you start the practice of getting up every day and walking 2 miles. So then you get to the first quarter moon, and that's the first crisis in action, right? So that's when adjustments need to be made. What's working, what's not, how can you change it? The second week then is what's leading up to the full moon. And that the full moon is when the seed comes to full power. So again, it can be more building exercises, just continuing to follow through. And then you get to the full moon, and what I will typically do during that process is some kind of meditation, reflection, celebration. I'm really fond of doing guided visualizations for full moons. And for this cycle in particular, the full moon falls on the first of the 2 eclipses. So that's August 7th. And that will be the partial solar eclipse. So there's lots of juicy energy going on for that. So right after the moon comes into full power with that full moon, then it starts to wane or die off again, right? So the third week process is one of starting to let go again. And you hit that last quarter square, and that's when the second crisis comes in, or the second adjustment period. So again, what needs to go, what needs to be changed. And then with the last week leading up to the final, or leading up to the next new moon, is again just that dying off process, that releasing process. And in this lunar cycle, that leads us up to the second eclipse, which, you know, it is a special lunar cycle also because we have 2 new moons in Leo this year, which isn't, you know, extraordinarily rare, but it also doesn't happen. Typically, you think of it as 1 new moon per sign. So that kind of gives us a double dose of Leo, right? So there's a lot of refining and recalibrating whatever that divine spark within you is that can then be planted again with the second new moon. Questions? Comments? Okay.
Oh, hi, Mia.
Yeah.
Just had a quick one. You mentioned that you write down what you want to let go of, and then you burn it, and then you write down what you're reaffirming, what you want to happen for the for that rest of the cycle. So would you do that burning within the ritual? Do you do that as part of it?
Yeah, I would do it that way. There's several reasons for that. One is, again, in the ritual space, you kind of have that container where you are intending to set whatever you're letting go of, like, off to be, you know, for me, it's, I usually, when I'm burning something, I'm imagining that it's going to be transmuted into love, light, joy, prosperity, abundance. And it's within that magical container, right? Which I think helps to direct the energy more. And then I'm immediately taking whatever empty space was created by letting that thing go and planting the seed in that space, right? Does that make sense? Okay. Anyone else? All right. So right now I'm going to take you through just a little guided visualization. That will be it's a power symbol meditation, right? And I thought that was a fitting one because a power symbol is really apropos of Leo and a new moon that's conjunct Mars. So what we're going to be doing is uncovering some kind of symbol or totem or medicine that will help you in the month to come with your intention. So sometimes people expect off the bat to see something in this kind of exercise, and that's not necessarily the case. A lot of people aren't visual seers. A lot of us see through our feelings, or we'll be reminded of a memory, or we'll just know something, or we'll see a color, or be drawn to a specific part of our body. So the more that you do guided visualizations like this, the more that you kind of get to know how your body perceives things. But again, it's just kind of giving yourself permission to have fun with it. So I'm going to ask you to just kind of first call to mind some kind of outdoor place where you're really comfortable. Preferably a place that's out of the city, but, you know, if it's your backyard or whatever, that's fine too. Just somewhere where you feel calm, centered, and in your power. So I'll just give you guys a couple seconds to call that place to mind. And so now just go ahead and close your eyes again and take those 3 deep breaths in and out. And just start to imagine yourself in that outdoor place. Just see or sense yourself there. Allow the details of your surroundings to fill in. And now again, just make the intention to come into your heart space. and to get in touch with your power, that divine spark of genius that resides within you. And try to sense what that power is like. And then just start to let whatever images or sensations want to arise from that, and ask for a symbol of your power to make itself known to you. And if it's confusing, feel free to ask it a question or ask it to show you how it can be helpful. Or if it makes sense, feel free to ask it those questions too. And then go ahead and just thank this symbol for coming forward. And return your attention to your breathing. And go ahead and open your eyes when you're ready. And then feel free to jot some things down if you want to or need to. I'm also open to hearing people's questions, or if anybody needs a little bit of external processing, that's fine too.
Amanda, how do we allow our child to play when we have these voices of, keep everything in control and do the right thing? And, like, how do we just free up our inner child?
Well, I mean, I wish it was as simple as just freeing it. But there's lots of different ways that you can kind of start, or that I've kind of started that process over many years. One of my favorite things to do is, again, go in my mind, kind of go to some kind of sacred place or special place. Or for me, I have kind of like this healing space that I've built into my psyche, and I invite my inner child to come forward. And sometimes she just wants hugs, but other times I get really creative, and I've called in a unicorn for her to ride. I've called in animals that are playful that she can be with. I listen to what she has to say. I listen to what she's afraid of. So it's kind of like a counseling session sometimes. Sometimes I'll call in my guides to help with that. But really, it's, one of the things that I often, if those are kind of the more like imaginal realm things that I do. But for my real life, sometimes I just think about the things that I liked to do when I was a child. So I really liked blowing bubbles. I really liked singing. I really liked putting on shows for people. And so I try to incorporate those things into my life now, with clearly the simplest being blowing bubbles. Right. And then it's kind of like creating a little magical wonderland with bubbles. I was over at a friend's house the other night, and they had a bunch of bubble wands, and all of us were blowing, and it was like they had all these rainbows in them, and it was so pretty. And it was just really good to feel that kind of like lighthearted energy coming through. So I guess, in summary, it's a slow process, but for me, it's kind of that reviving the feeling of it being safe enough to experience joy. And then sometimes just telling her she doesn't have to be in charge of all that anymore, that I've got it covered. most of the time.
Great. Thank you so much, Amanda.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? Okay, so with whatever, came up during that exercise, and if nothing really came up, do it again at some point. But you can take that image and use it. So that means, if it was something like an animal or a scene, you could draw it or paint it or collage it and put it on your altar, or you could buy a little, stone animal fetish. If it's something like a color, you can wear more of that color, bring it into your life, or you can just imagine yourself in that color, or imagine your heart center immersed in that color. Sometimes people get sounds, and I just encourage you to make the sound. Or if it's a movement, make the movement. So for example, if you were like, I want to see an image of my power, and all of a sudden you felt like shrugging your shoulders a lot, shrug your shoulders a lot on a daily basis for a week and just see what comes. Again, this stuff is really mysterious, but it usually has some kind of relevance if you just trust it and stick with it. And then again, at the full moon, you can do that kind of visualization again and see what comes up with there, or interact with that figure or symbol some more. Okay, so we have like 15 minutes left. If anybody wants more specific insight into this new moon and their chart, or how to whittle things down, I'm open for questions.
Hi, Amanda.
Hey.
You mentioned that you created a space in your psyche, a safe place, healing place that you go to. Was that something that you created over a long period of time, or can you give us some insights into that?
So I took like my first kind of like intro to shamanism class, taught us how to do that. So I have created over time, but essentially the process was going to a power spot. So like the spot you just went to where you feel really comfortable. And then there was a staircase that we were told to kind of like build to walk down. So you'd walk down the staircase, and there's like a door there with some kind of healing symbol. And then you open the door, and I just started creating a space. So for me, it was like, there's a library in it. There's like a room with a bunch of windows that look out on the ocean. And I just deemed it my healing space. And I've actually got another one that I use too, that I learned through a different technique. But yeah, it is a process of just giving, for me, it's been giving myself permission to just imagine and trust, and it works really well. Mm-hmm. Anyone else?
I love this. Thank you for sharing. I've done this with my sisters a couple of times, with the writing down our intentions, and doing it together seemed to like amplify it. It was interesting to watch it unfold. And then every time we get together, because we all live in different places, we do either new moon or a full moon kind of.
Right.
So,
well, and it's
I'd love to see how others do it. It's great.
Yeah, it's easy stuff, but it's a lot easier to do when you're like in a group and kind of forced to.
Yeah. That's great. Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome.
Yes, I have a question about the altar, having a special place. I really like this idea. Mm-hmm. And you put like, you say to put some symbol of like that represent your goal during this new moon. And
I hope you cut out there.
I was just curious, about this altar. So, I mean, what would you put on an altar when you have one, like on a permanent basic, or you were talking about some stone, and you were talking about like the symbol for that new moon, and
yeah. So, for my altar, I have an altar I have several altars that are permanent that have, statues of deities that I work with and stones and things like that. When I'm building an altar specifically for a new moon, I mean, you get creative with it. So like if it was a Taurian new moon, I'd probably get some flowers for Venus, probably put some kind of food and wine on there. I tend to be kind of a fly by the seat of my pants ritual person. So I'll just kind of look around my immediate surroundings and again, go with what my gut's telling me wants to be on there. But then I might like look up, stones and things that correspond. So for this new moon, I have like a little bronze, sun figurine that I could put on there. And then orange colored stones seem to be good for the fire elements, right? So citrine or carnelian. And then I might get some kind of like spicy smelling essential oils and burn them in a diffuser while I'm doing the ritual. And then as a morning ritual, just to like kind of, because scent is so associated with memory, I would then burn the same oil each day to kind of remind myself through the scent of what the intention had been. So I might use like black pepper and cinnamon and I don't know, something else, grapefruit to sweeten it up or something like that. And it's just one of those things where, again, if you just give yourself permission to like have fun with it and see what works for you, as you keep doing new moon rituals, then it'll just be kind of like second nature, where you can just kind of like put an altar together really quickly. That's really effective and pretty and fun and serves the purpose really well.
And is there some ritual that you do on an everyday basis, like with an altar?
Sometimes. So for me, it depends on, my motivation level. If it's a significant new moon for me, so like the solar eclipse or the lunar eclipse on August 21st happens right on my north node. So that will be a significant new moon for me. So then I might have a plan for every day after it, where I either like am spending 5 minutes visualizing myself in the scenario I'm trying to create, or doing some journaling and reflecting about how my intention is going, or might do some other kind of meditative practice, just something that's every day to kind of like, again, because the magic needs participation, right? And so just having like little mini rituals every day, as in like something that I do repeatedly in order to keep it going, can be really helpful. And some months I don't do that at all.
Thanks, Amanda. And I guess burning candles would be good too, because of the element of fire. Yeah.
Yep. And that's a really good thing to do, where just like in the morning or at night, you just light the same candle again. And again, it's just reminding yourself of what the intention was or is.
What can we do in a group? Like, even like an online group?
I know.
What?
Okay, you guys, I'm so happy you asked. I've been like thinking about this for days. I want to start a Leo Aquarius group.
I'm in.
Done. Would you guys want to join?
Yes, I do.
We could do new moon, and all we could do the moons together.
Yeah, I mean, it's
rituals and share what we're doing and our support.
Yeah, the options are endless, really.
Yeah, how are we being creative, and how are we being authentic, and how are we having fun? But I've been wanting to start this group. I thought this would be good practice, with astrology and just being like in leadership a little, because I'm just like kind of, not really sure. So I just thought that would be fun. So does this sound like something good or? Linda?
Sure.
Yeah. Did you have something else in mind?
No, that sounds fantastic, Lauren. I'll be in, and I'm sure most of us here will be. So just let us know. Just be in touch with me.
Okay.
Thanks, Lauren. I just wanted to say something else to Amanda, that when I was visualizing, I can't remember which one it was, but a lot of the symbols that came up to me were the the IC, because the new moon's happening on my MC, just at the end of the 9th house. And I just thought it was interesting how the polarity came up in the visualizations. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what comes to mind there for me is that, at least to me, the IC is a really grounding part of the chart.
Supposedly.
And so it can be that, you know, just a reminder to keep the balance between the inner and outer, right?
Uh-huh. Excellent. Thank you. Yes.
Amanda, I'm sure you said this earlier, but are we doing the ritual before the new moon? Do you like just before it?
You know, I think that it makes the most sense to either do it right at the new moon or after it, because if you're doing it before, then that's when the energy is still waning, right? But, you know, I don't tend to be very strict in these things. Again, I would, it makes more sense to me to have it be within like the first 6 to 8 hours after the new moon. But if the only time you can do it is 2 hours before, then just do it with that in mind. And then maybe like at the time of the new moon, do some kind of like affirmation or just acknowledgement. I mean, I think the powers that be tend to be pretty, you know, they tend to be pretty lenient, especially when we're talking to them about like why we're doing it a certain way. Is that all? All right. Well, it might be a good time to call it a day then.
Great practice, Amanda. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Amanda.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
In August.
Love that, Amanda. That was really interesting.
Thank you so much. Very helpful. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.